everybody, Brett Boyd here. Welcome to another installment of Testimonies in Funny Places. And today we are by the Carvel ice cream cake refrigerator here at Stop and Shop. And not even sure if I'm allowed to be recording in here, but we're gonna do this one quickly. So here's a really cool testimony from years ago. It was probably about 2008. And so this is what happened. My mother was in a terrible car wreck. She nearly died. Almost every bone in her body was broken. The only thing she didn't suffer was brain damage, thank God. And so she made a miraculous recovery. That in itself was a testimony. So what ended up happening was, after she recovered, we were at a church in North Jersey at the time, and she was asked to come and give her testimony of the miraculous healing that occurred after her accident. And so she came and gave her testimony, and that was amazing. And weeks after that testimony, I had literally woken up one morning, and this had never happened before. I felt like God said, "Don't go to work today. I need you to go into New York City and pray for somebody." Now, let me just back up and say, there was a kid who was going to that church that I knew was in the hospital, and didn't know him well at all. Didn't really know his family that well. His father happened to be a musician who played for Les Paul, the famous guitarist. And so I knew that. That's about as much as I knew. Was not like really friends with him, but I knew that he was in the city at a hospital. I don't even think I knew where, which I ended up finding out. But woke up one morning and God said, "I want you to not go into work today, and I want you to go into New York City and pray for this kid." I had no idea where I was going. So long story short, I obeyed the voice of the Lord. I'm so glad I did. And I called out of work. I drove my car down to Bergen County, hopped on a train. That train went into Secaucus. Now, mind you, the whole way I'm going there, I'm learning everything as I go. There was no preparation. This was a last-minute thing God had me do. I get to Secaucus wondering, how do I even get to New York City? I had to get to Columbia Presbyterian Hospital. I'm at Secaucus it's kind of like a crossover station. Then I think you get onto the PATH train into New York. And I'm walking through this very crowded terminal, and I hear someone call my name, "Brett Boyd, Brett Boyd." I'm like, are you kidding me right now? Some guy, I see him, he's calling my name. I've never seen this guy before. I'm like, okay. So I go over to him, and he says, "Hey, Brett," he says, "you don't know who I am." I'm like, oh boy, here we go. Here's another God thing. He says, "You don't know who I am, but I was at that church a couple weeks ago when your mom gave a testimony. And I don't usually go to that church," he said, "but I was there the day your mom gave the testimony, and boy, that testimony was amazing. Isn't God good?" I said, "Well, yeah, he is." And I said, "And actually, the reason why I'm here is because I felt like God told me to go into New York and pray for a kid that's at that church." And he said, "Where's the hospital?" I said, "Columbia Presbyterian." He says, "Well, guess what?" He says, "I'm going into New York City today." He says, "You'd never believe it, but he was actually, I think, a youth pastor." And he says, one day out of the whole year, he's scheduled to go into New York City for a youth pastors conference. He said, "And today is that day." He said, "So let me show you how to get there." So he accompanied me on the PATH train into New York. He helped me get to the place I was going. I went there, prayed for my friend. I didn't see any instant firework miracles go on that day, but there was a lot of signs pointing to God restoring that kid, that friend. And it took a couple years, but that kid was completely restored, back to perfect health. And the cool part out of all that was, I did it because of my heart. I did it because I was obeying God's voice. But I ended up getting a call from his father, who was a musician for Les Paul, and he said, that he had heard of what I did to go pray for his son, and he offered for me to come and sing as a guest with Les Paul. And I got to fulfill a dream of going and singing with one of the world's most famous musicians and music icons, the legendary Les Paul. So just goes to show you how when you obey God's voice, you could never imagine the things that God has planned for you to reward you for obeying him and for following your heart and listening for his heart.